All right, y'all, so this week I want to address one of the biggest things that I notice between our amateur hitters and our professional hitters. So one of the first things that we always notice with our amateurs versus our professional is just simply like ground force data. The professionals always just create way more force than our amateurs do. But that may not even be the biggest difference between pros and amateurs that we see with different data that we collect. So obviously, the 30-year-old, the 25-year-old elite athlete at the highest level creates more force than our 12-year-olds, right? And so for us, when we look at data, yes, that is a big difference, but with age, with size, with strength, with just maturity overall, most kids, while yes, going to the weight room can really help and continuing to train over time can really help, most kids are just gonna get stronger and create more force just by getting older, playing more, working out more, etc. And it's not necessarily the biggest thing that we notice, in our opinion, the difference between pros and amateurs. So honestly, when we take a look at our premium evals and we collect ground force data, we collect kinematics, we collect our data from our bat with blast, so bat speed, we collect ball flight data with Rapsodo. One of the biggest things that we notice, other than the obvious of one's creating more force than the other, right, is actually kinematics, the transfer of energy from segment to segment, up the body, through the body, into the barrel, and into the ball at contact. So let's take a dive into all this and what this really means. So basically, what we're talking about when we're talking about ground force is, let's just say we have two buckets here, right? Which one of these buckets can hold more? Just from the looks of it, right? Is like, we got a typical bucket here, and then we got like the bigger two-handle bucket, right? If we're just looking from the naked eye, we're gonna say this black bucket can carry more than this white bucket. So basically, what I'm saying is our pros have a bigger bucket or a bigger pool to pull from, so they create more force in general, right? Rather than this is gonna be more of like our amateur athlete, right? They just have less force or less of a pool to pull from, right? So an analogy that we like to use is pretend these two buckets could hold water, right? So if I take this lid off, right, these two buckets can hold water, right? This one can hold more water than this one can, right? And if we had to put water in it to, let's say there's a fire right here where this red band is, right? If we need water, this is gonna have the capacity or the potential to hold more water, right, than this one is. So our pros have the capacity or the potential to create more force going into contact or creating more force up at the plate than our amateurs, right? But now when we're talking about kinematics, we're talking about actually getting this water that's in the bucket onto the fire to put the fire out. So let's say this bucket, right, is all the way full, all the way up to the top, right? And then this bucket's full all the way to the top. This bucket can actually hold more water. But let's say I'm grabbing these buckets from over here and I gotta put the fire out, and then I go to pour the water out and I go, right? And only some of the water gets onto the fire, right? The fire's not gonna get put out, right? It's not as efficient. I'm taking all this water and I'm not really getting it all into contact. So there's inefficiency with the transfer of force, the transfer of water into contact or into the fire, right? So this would be where kinematics comes into play. So now let's say we take the other bucket that has less water in it, or we have less potential energy, right, to get into contact, but we take this, we grab it, and we put all of it onto the water, all of it into contact. What we see is, yes, the potential of energy does give us the ability to hit the ball harder or the capacity to hit the ball harder, but it doesn't always necessarily equate to results onto the field. Whereas what we see is the kinematics is the athletes that transfer energy better, actually consistently hit the ball harder, their average exit velocities are higher, and they produce better come game time. Now, what do we do with this information, right? So while it is important to create the capacity, build the capacity up so we have the ability to create more force and hit balls harder, right? It's more important that we make sure our technique allows us to be adjustable and to be able to create force at lower levels but still hit balls hard, so we don't have to redline, right, like a car. We don't have to redline or push everything all the way max to the limit to get our best results. We want to be effective and we want to be repeatable. And so again, doing moves and having a technique that allows us to transfer force efficiently so we don't have to max out and create 100% force or 1 rep max all the time is going to give us the ability to basically take our cage swing into the game and create results. So if you want to dive into some of that stuff, we have products, we have drills, we have programming, we have all sorts of resources for you guys. Check out our app if you want to take a deeper dive.